Whether you're focusing on business, brand, or your professional development, while you are dealing with the matters that are impacting your here and now, you also have to have your sights set for what's next. We're speaking with leaders on their personal journeys, on their stories, on how they have addressed the challenges of today while setting the stage for tomorrow. So here we go.
How this will work? Julie and we've done this a few times. I'm going to introduce Julie, and I'm going to just ask some questions, but we'll open it up to the audience too to ask Julie any questions that you might have. So by way of background, I'll give Julie's kind of bio. And Julie grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and went to the University of Dayton. She started her career, and we've been talking to Kate Grabowski, who's back there and is a senior at TCU, whether to go agency side or brand side. Julie started, though, at an agency. She worked for J. Walter Thompson in media, and then went on to a really small brand called the Coca-Cola Company, and worked there
I was like, where are you going with this?
She worked there for over 20 years and grew from a media person to headed up My Coke Rewards to shopper marketing, and then was recruited away to a company called Hain Celestial and headed up digital. And then, of course, was recruited away to head up global digital for the Kellogg company. And then now is the CMO of North America for Kellogg, and just a really dear friend. So super excited to have Julie as our first Now to Next person. And so Julie, I'm just going to start firing away.
Yes. By the way, Jo Ann is, her resume is more impressive than mine. So questions to her as well. This shouldn't be just all about me. She's got a lot of good insight too. So, so it's a dual show.
Well, thank you. So how about we start? How did you and I meet?
So we met through great fortune of our daughters. We both have only children that are the same age, and girls. They're 19. They're both freshmen in college this year. So Jo Ann and I became empty nesters at the same time. And they met each other at the swimming pool. And was the swimming pool or the park? Either one. Anyway, with our nannies, because we were building careers. And they met and kind of started to play together and knew each other. And Jo Ann's daughter, Lily, introduced us one day, and our families became kind of fast friends as a result. And we have, I'd say, probably almost every birthday, every first communion, every graduation, every Christmas. We just took our girls to Paris in June. We do kind of like have grown up together as families, and it's been a wonderful thing because our children are only daughters, and so they're like sisters now, and it's a really wonderful thing. So,
yeah, when my daughter was 3, she met Riley at a park, and she kept telling me about, Mom, there's this lady, her name is Mrs. Julie Bowerman, and she has yellow hair like you. And she introduced us, which is so funny.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in the marketing world? I mentioned J. Walter Thompson and then moving to Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was in grad school at Michigan State and did a case study in my grad program on Diet Coke, and I just had this like click in my head that I was like, oh, this is fun. I love brands, and I love how brands. It was like the idea of connecting a brand with a consumer and figuring out how to do that just really resonated with me. And I was in Michigan, so I decided I was ready for warmer weather. So I just moved to Atlanta on a chance. And, you know, at that point, you're kind of like, okay, what's the job? What job can I get? So I got an agency job, but that led me to meet some people at Coca-Cola. And that opened the door to get into there. But it wasn't as purposeful as maybe sometimes initially as you might think. You know, I got a little bit lucky. And as I got into Coke and learned from, I think, one of the best marketers in the world, kind of what marketing is, and kind of grew my marketing skills there, I just grew a passion for it. And so that built upon itself, and I kind of carried my career from there. And it's, like I said, it's never been like well planned and thought through. I've kind of just let kind of each opportunity come, as it kind of fell into my lap most of the time.
So how has marketing changed since your days at J. Walter Thompson to now?
Oh,
what have you
gosh.
seen?
So much. I mean, I'm dating myself, but it's so much harder now. Marketing, when I started at Coke and brand, we were very focused on creative and hero creative. And we took, built a 30-second, creative spot, and then we'd adapt that to out-of-home print, and that was about it. Super easy. And it was very top of the funnel. And so you were able to just, really focus more on like the equities of the brand. And it was more brand, I think, kind of led type of marketing. Now, I think, with the fragmentation of media and channels and customization based on channel, and it's now, I think, more consumer led. And so you're really having to, it's harder to kind of keep the equities of your brand true and own that in a way, but that also meets whatever channel or consumer that you're going to. So it's way more complex, and something that we work on and struggle with a lot. Kind of where do you stay kind of true to your brand, or do you focus more on the consumer, and what's that right mix in terms of kind of building out your content and your experience plans?
I didn't give you this question.
Oh, okay. I don't even remember the list anyways.
Okay, good. So tell me about the day in the life of a chief marketing officer at Kellogg.
That's a good question. It's not as glamorous as you think it is. It's definitely, it's a lot of working with my team and our agency partners. It is, like I get up, each day is different. I spend a lot of one-on-one time with my team members. We have a lot of like review sessions, maybe on work, like leadership meetings. But one of the things that I am trying to do this year, and more so than ever, is like find dedicated time to kind of bring the outside in. So last year, one of the things we did was we held this big marketing summit at our headquarters, and brought, for a day and a half, brought all external speakers in and really built the brain of our marketing organization on areas that we were trying to build capability in. And it's amazing when you do that, you realize like what I don't know. You think because when you kind of work through the day-to-day of meetings and whatever the routines are, you kind of get focused internally. And so I think that kind of that continuous of like force yourself to say, okay, how can I bring the outside in is something that, I'm definitely trying to interject into my day-to-day or week-to-week, or however you think about it. But it's not as glamorous. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like everybody's, to be honest.
So one thing, I think my favorite job was being a director of marketing.
Yeah.
The higher up I went, the CMO role for me was more about HR and finance, and less so about the creative and the.
You get farther away from the work for sure. Yeah.
Do you see that?
Definitely. Yeah. I crave getting closer to the work. As a matter of fact, we're doing, you may have seen, Kellogg's, kind of our company is splitting into 3 entities right now. And so we're doing a lot of organizational, change and work. And one of the things that, as I'm thinking about kind of the future state of my marketing organization, I'm in my head, I'm like, how do I get closer to the work? Because that's what I actually love to do. And I don't do as much of it in my day-to-day, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to give you another off-ball question. What's your favorite Kellogg product?
They're all so good. One of my favorites is the an extra toasty Cheez-It.
Oh my gosh.
With a glass of wine,
Yeah.
for sure. But our RX brand, this brand right here, has just launched a new extension called AM. And if you know RX, it's kind of more of a chewy kind of consistency. And so we've now are extending that and bringing more oat into it. So it's got a little bit more of a granola. It's excellent. It's excellent. So I'm a little addicted to that right now.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So what, and a lot of us are brand side and some are agency side. What do you look for in an agency partner? And how does an agency partner stay with you long time, for a long term?
Yeah, good question. I think it's kind of the combination of capability and chemistry. You know, certainly capability is incredibly important. You know, all the things I just talked about in terms of the ability to think about how, you know, the channels of marketing that we leverage and how content works in those channels, all of those things, you know, client rosters they have and their creative output. But I think a lot of it is chemistry to me. It's almost more important because there's so many agency partners. And so that chemistry of like, not only the personal rapport, but I think the chemistry of you kind of get us, you know, you get us culturally, you get us from a business standpoint is really important. And so I think, you know, that is the kind of the secret of, you know, as we look for agency partners, you know, what tends to click and have staying power.
I think some of it with agencies, it's great when they know your business almost better than you do.
Yeah.
Because as a CMO, you are in so many meetings and you're more internal. And
Definitely.
It's great when an agency partner sees things that you might not see and brings it forward and helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even on the agency side, I mean, you don't want to work with a client that's not a fit for you either.
Right.
You know, if the chemistry is not right from a culture standpoint, it's not going to work, you know? And so, you know, so I'd say that's kind of the delicate matching process. So.
Okay, here's a question I haven't given to Julie either. So what advice would you give your Julie Bowerman 28-year-old self? And this question's for Kate Grabowski back there.
You know, to just relax a little bit. I have always been a very achievement-oriented, ambitious, like competitive person. And I was in a rush early in my career to have a certain title or, you know, and I judged my success by titles and growth and, you know, and now I look back as I'm kind of coming more to the end of my career and looking at it and saying, God, it was really the experiences, the people, the things I got to do along the way. And I would have taken an opportunity, I think now in reflection, to do things that I didn't think I could do at the time. For example, one of my probably biggest regrets was at Coke, you have this opportunity to work anywhere in the world. And I'm a travel bug. It's like one of my passions. And I had the opportunity to move abroad, and, you know, it would have been in situations that were a little, you know, compromising, you know, to my lifestyle or maybe more lateral types of moves. And it wasn't, and I walked away from a couple of those opportunities. And now I'm like, why didn't I do that? I should have done it. It would have been such a growth experience in a way that I could have never imagined. You know, and so I tell people coming up in their career, you know, don't like feel like you've got to like go hard and fast on climbing the ladder or picking a career. Do a lot of things and get a lot of experiences as early as you can, because then also what happens later on in your career is when you've got that breadth of experience and you can sit in front of someone who's interviewing and saying, I lived abroad and I did this job and I did this job. They don't worry about titles. They just look at you as a person with really cool experiences. And so that's probably, you know, how I would have relaxed a little bit and gotten more cool experiences.
Yeah. So who inspires you, or who are some of your role models and why?
Yeah. I honestly, some of the people that inspire me are some of the people that even work for me. Like I have this, right now I have this woman on my team that she's very focused on like culture and kind of how, like the culture, building kind of the right culture. And she's bringing in a lot of like perspective that's very different than kind of how we think about traditional marketing. She's leading our multicultural marketing team. And so she just constantly has the courage to kind of push us in ways that I'm always impressed. And so the people that inspire me have a little bit of that courage in them, that are willing to kind of go out a little bit on the limb and be confident in their perspective and their point of view. And so like she's one of them. So I kind of look for leaders like that. I have an old boss. She's now the CEO of Tropicana. She's a very courageous leader, but courageous not to a detriment, just not at the sake of being courageous, appropriately courageous. But when you get into a corporate situation, it's really easy to follow the politics and get kind of stuck in like what you think is culturally appropriate. And so for me, when I see women or leaders in general that are kind of using some of their courage to speak up, that inspires me to kind of do that for others as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's not the best answer, but that's like the kind of the style of person that I think I aspire to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what publications do you read? What books are you reading?
This is a question. This is like not an interesting question. I don't have a good answer on this one. I'm not really a business book person. I don't do a lot of reading, although I have read Jo Ann's book. Did Jo Ann tell you she's recently written a book that's amazing, and everybody should go read it. It's a wonderful book. I wrote the foreword in it for her, so it's awesome. Go read it. But I use a lot of there's a couple of sources I have from agencies that I get access to, thought leadership through our agency partners. So I honestly, nothing.
Okay, we're gonna do a little rapid fire. Pop-Tart, blueberry, strawberry, chocolate.
Blueberry.
RX bar, what flavor?
Maple sea salt.
Cereal.
Special K, vanilla cinnamon.
Ooh, yum.
Pecan, vanilla cinnamon pecan, yeah.
Coke brand.
Diet Coke for sure. Yeah.
All right, for the audience, any questions for Julie? Anything that? Would you mind saying your name and where you work? And
I work for ACO, I was just wondering if you could share what your most favorite marketing campaign you ever worked on was, and then also on the flip side, what other campaign that you worked on that just completely bombed?
Ooh, good question. So favorite campaign, one that bombed?
Yeah. So the one that I can start with the one that bombed because I just told the story to Jo Ann's marketing class. If you guys remember a brand called Surge. So Surge was, launched when I was early in my career at Coke, and it was a huge success. And we launched it as an attempt to go after Mountain Dew, which Mountain Dew is like a powerhouse brand. And I think we naively thought that we could actually go after Mountain Dew. But anyway, so we launched it. It was initially a huge success. And then as, typical, if you don't kind of know that you're in it for the long term, and Coke wasn't at the time, making the right investments to keep it kind of going, we delisted it. But because of the brand and some of the early success, there was this fan following. And so for years, we had these fans on Facebook that were Surge fans, and they would write our CEO and they would post on social media, and it was a decent sized group of people. So when I was leading our e-commerce business for Coke, I thought, let's relaunch Surge through our e-commerce channel. We don't need to put in brick and mortar. We can just launch it through e-commerce. And it seemed like it was a good idea, but what happened was we kind of underestimated the popularity of it. And so we didn't produce the right amount, but we marketed too big to it and didn't have the right inventory. So it sold out in like 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then we were scrambling to produce more, and it became kind of this negative thing on social media that they couldn't get it. And then people were trying to buy it from each other who did get it. So then we built up some more inventory, put it up again, same thing happened. We did it 3 times. And it finally was there was too much demand, and it was causing more negative backlash. So that was one of those where like every day I was giving updates to the president of the North America business on what was going on. So that one was not a good one for sure. I'd say the marketing kind of campaign or initiative that I'm most, probably proud of or known for is, Jo Ann kind of mentioned it in my bio, is I was responsible for launching the My Coke Rewards platform for Coke. And it started off as, kind of a quick brief from a senior leader to me. I was leading digital at the time and said, hey, let's build a loyalty program and for the summer for Coke and Diet Coke. And so we started this kind of, points on caps kind of thing. And you'd go on websites and enter it and there would be some rewards to it. Well, it was a huge success, like initially. It just kind of spiraled, and it was in its tenure. It's still a little bit live, but it lasted, almost over 10 years, won many awards, became the starting point of kind of this digital transformation that I also led at Coke, where we were able to, take all of the technology that we built on the back end of this loyalty and really transform the way we did digital in terms of collecting consumer data and using it to kind of build different, push marketing tools. And then it became kind of a platform that we just wired all into our own digital assets and built e-commerce off the back end. So it just became this bigger and bigger thing, grounded in what started was a loyalty program. And so I'd say that was probably one of my, yeah.
So in the spirit of the event itself, like in your role, what are you challenged by now? What do you have your sights on for next?
Mm-hmm. The thing we're probably the most challenged on right now, and the question I get all the time, is kind of being culturally relevant and how to do that. And it's one of these things where I don't know that it's a hard answer because, like, first of all, I think that's kind of a broad question, like what is being culturally relevant? In some ways, I think we are culturally relevant. Some of our brands like Cheez-Its, and they do some really cool things. But I think it's coming from a place of like I was talking about, kind of more consumer-led brand building, where platforms, influencers, consumers are owning, right, like what the brand means to them. And so resonating with that in a way that's kind of authentic is the hardest thing. And so, we're spending a lot of time right now with some of our agency partners of like, looking at data and tools and ways to say, what's the pulse of, this consumer set, or what's kind of trending right now on TikTok that we can tap into, or what influencers. And so we're taking a little more of a tactical approach to it than I think a strategic approach to saying, how are we gonna own this a little bit more, or have this capability and sophistication. So that's one of the things right now that we're struggling with right now. The thing that's next that's really, I think, going to be, and it's kind of, we're struggling with it now, but I don't think it's as relevant, is the space of data and how do we use data to, like we're shifting a lot of our marketing to a more full funnel capability. And so as we think about full funnel, experience and media plans, it's got to be grounded in a data capability. And so it's like, do we own that? Do we partner with it? Do we buy it? What changes do we have to make in order to enable that? It's a lot of like change management and the way that you brief and you build consumer insights. And so we're spending a lot of time on that right now as well.
Saw some hand. Stephen?
What role does marketing play at Kellogg within product development?
You mean like the innovation side of it? We play more of a role in terms of that. I think it's a little, be honest, I think it's probably we're not great at that. We play more of the, we're ready to launch a product and how do we launch it? So the campaign side of it and the consumer communication of it. But this comment that I was just talking about in terms of data, I think what we're trying to realize is that also enables us the ability to think about product development in a way that we haven't. We kind of take a traditional view to product development on it.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, you mean like making choices on investment? Yeah. 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 It's that's tricky. And trust me, it's one as a CMO, and as a marketer in general, I've faced it most of my career. As marketers, we tend to be a little bit more long-term oriented when you think about kind of the balance of short and long-term in terms of how you make investment decisions. And so, brand marketers tend to be a little more long-term oriented in nature, where sales or other parts of the organization tend to be a little more short-term in focus. And so I have to do both. But I'm held accountable to the short term. So we have a very methodical way of looking at ROI and its contribution to short-term sales. We build that into our P&L. That helps inform a lot of our investment. But simultaneous to that, one of the things that we've been doing for about a year now is also building more measurement tools that help us kind of like relinquish the handcuffs of ROI only as the metric, and really looking at more kind of longer term and balancing both of those together. A good example of this is a lot of brands in our portfolio, but brands in general, like have this agenda or objective around recruiting. Mm-hmm. And so when you recruit new consumers, it's not short term. It's a longer term investment play. It doesn't pay out, generally speaking, short term, and right, because you're starting small to get big and build consumers over time. And so the investment posture that you have to have in recruitment is different than talking to your existing consumers. And so we're looking at the way we invest to say, okay, taking kind of a more strategic approach. If we want to recruit, how do we kind of take investment outside of our current P&L boundaries and kind of hold that on the outside? So keep a percentage of our marketing that's not necessarily accountable to the P&L contributions, but it's enabling us to do the right things for the brand. So it's a little bit, you've probably heard many brands talk about kind of this 70-20-10 approach to investment. It's a very similar kind of concept of like, you've got to kind of really push to say, we've got to have some investment that allows us to focus on the long term, maybe not as much, as it contributes to the short term. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Do you have much budget to innovate and experiment?
Never as much as you want, but to this discussion that we're having, we take a little bit more. We don't do 70-20-10. Coke used to do 70-20-10 a lot. We do, it's maybe more like 80-20, 90-10, depending on the brand. Yeah, it's kind of how we do it. But we definitely hold a budget for experimentation.
How does that strategy impact your global approach?
What the strategy of the investment strategy?
The investment strategy, the brand message, the vehicles in which you use, how does that impact it at the global scale?
Yeah, so kind of similar. Coke does this to Kellogg's. We do this at Kellogg. We decide globally kind of what are the core equities of the brand, and that could be, anything from the packaging graphics. It could be the formulation of the product. It could be the messaging that we use to talk about the brand. So depending on the brand, it could vary, and we just govern that. So we decide. Coke was really good at this on some of their core brands, like Coke, Diet Coke, particularly were this way. Sprite, some of those core brands that sit in the portfolio, you hold true to your distinctive assets of that brand and those equities, but then the adaptation in the market could vary, right? Like the messaging could vary, or the execution elements of what channel mix you have, or your pricing strategies. All of that could vary based on the dynamics, but it's on your core brands. We do it at Kellogg. Cheez-It, for example, is a global brand. I mean, there's very distinctive assets about that brand that we all know we can't touch. That is really important to hold true. And so I think that's the approach we take. It doesn't mean you do the same thing in every single market, but it's like, okay, what do you own? What do you kind of keep true to the brand, and then let the rest be flexible to the market.
John?
Thanks, Julie. We know the CMO role has purview, tenures of CMOs is shrinking a little bit. We all kind of read that it's an increasingly difficult, kind of complicated job. If there's future CMOs in the room here, what advice would you give? And what's someone going to need to be successful as a CMO in the next 10 years?
Well, CMO jobs are they're so different everywhere. Like every company has, as I meet different CMOs or, talk to recruiters or, CMO scopes are very different. The companies define them, and now there's even like CXO roles and there's chief digital roles. And so I think every company has a little bit different definition of what CMO means. So I think, first of all, like being really clear on what you're good at, what you want to do. I know for me, like the things I love to do, the things I am good at. And so for me, as I look for, a CMO role, I look at that. What's the scope of it? What do I kind of have in my purview or my remit that I know I can be successful at and I can thrive in that. So I think that's a big one to say, like, what are the things you like to do? Because that definition of CMO is changing a little bit. So that's how I think about it, for sure.
Coca-Cola has a lot of good global initiatives for good.
Yeah.
How important is that still to consumers and anything going on in Kellogg's that makes sense for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you have to do, it's the right thing, right? As a corporation, as big companies, we can't rely on only just NGOs or the government to be the voice of good, right? Corporations have to own that. It's just the right thing to do. The value of that in terms of its contribution to marketing and how we measure impact in marketing, I think is mixed, and it varies. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And we know that is, there's certain places that align to our brands, because of the nature. Like, we're a very agricultural based business. We grew up through farmers. A lot of our ingredients are plant-based. We are, kind of, particularly with our cereal brands, it's about kind of every day, kind of starting your day off with good nutrition. Every day, breakfast is important. And so that kind of that idea of no kid hungry and helping farmers, that just is inherent as who we are as a company. And there's a need there. And so that matching, I think, the good with your brands and your purpose of the business, what your business stands for, is just makes it more organic. And I think that's where the value comes from. You know, can I tell you today, if I run a program, you know, around our Better Days platform, which is what we call our ESG platform, and it contributes immediately to X in sales? Not necessarily, but we know that there's value in doing that for other reasons, and that's why we do it.
Jay?
What consumer trend are you watching? And as you look back over your career, what change has surprised you most about what consumers have moved to or changed?
There's a lot of, I mean, the one I mentioned around kind of influencers and how influencers build brand, that's a big one we're watching. I think certainly we watch a lot of like ingredient preferences. That's a big one for us in terms of, you know, plant-based versus gluten versus sugar, right? Like those are all big trends that we watch really closely. And you know, it's, as it relates to ingredient, that's tricky because your brand, we have big brands, we have big scale brands that a lot of consumers love as they exist today, right? But you've got trends that kind of come in and influence that. It's tricky in how you innovate around that and market. And you don't want to variate too much from your core brand, but you also want to address those trends. So selecting which ones you do or don't do or follow, because they're, you know, happening every day. You guys all know, for your own health, right? You kind of follow different trends. And so kind of watching that and picking out, you know, what makes sense, I think is the tricky part of it.
Sharice, I know you had a question.
You mentioned being inspired by someone on your team who's courageous.
Mm-hmm.
Either now or throughout your career, what supports have you found helpful to inspire that kind of courage throughout the organization?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think finding people that are mentors, right, that you see and you can emulate and you can get coaching from is part of that. And so finding people, like one of the things I give advice to a lot of people is like, I think that this kind of concept of mentorship is like overvalued. I think, as you know, I hear a lot of junior people in their careers like, I need a mentor, and you know, oh, this person has this title, and therefore this is a great mentor. And to me, my best mentors have been people that I really like, am inspired by, or know that they hold my core values, and I'm motivated by. And that might take some time to find that person that's right for you. I mean, networking is important to grow your career, so right, but mentorship is around people who have the characteristics that you value and you want to emulate. And so for me, I have had a couple of really critical mentors that are like that. You know, I know, like, for me, I have this desire to be a change agent. I don't do well in jobs that kind of are, here's the play, run this play. I like to come in and look at things and say, how can I make it better? How should it be better? And with that comes the need to be courageous at times, to have conversations with people in organizations that they might not want to hear. And I've just learned that, you know, and so I've had to learn the skill of being courageous. And I've done it through just associating myself with people who I think are doing it.
Mm-hmm. Don't you feel like it has to be safe to be able to make?
Yeah, I think the culture definitely plays a role in, like, you know, some cultures are just not going to allow you. Some organizations are just going to be like, it's not appropriate. We don't want to hear from you. Just run the play. Then that's not right for you. That's not right for me. You know, when I have over probably the last 10 years, when I have looked at job opportunities, one of my first questions is always like, what's the leader like that I'm going to work for? And, you know, what's their style of leadership? And that, for me, I know it will make or break that job for me, and will it be a match? So does that help? Okay, okay, good.
You mentioned agency partners. When you're talking to agency partners in your team, are you looking for better creative or faster creative? In the sense of 5 years ago, we might have 2 weeks to come up with a creative solve. We're asking 4 or 5 days for that same ask 5 years ago. So it's like we're always
Better. The answer is better creative.
Okay.
Faster. There's so many ways to do faster. Like that's an easier solve. I know, easy for me on the client side to say that when you're sitting on the agency side, you're like, no, it's not that easy. But better creative, I think is the.
So even with that hard deadline, it's like still figure out how to make sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Erin?
Yeah, with the grain shortage last year and obviously this year as well, how have you had to pivot some of your campaigns and just the way that you're looking at consumption globally?
Yeah, it's for us. I mean, we're in a very fortunate position at Kellogg. Like our demand is very good, right? Our business is performing very well, so we have great demand. So that is, and it's not just in grain, it's like just in general supply chain compression in terms of, access to ingredients, access to staffing, access to trucks. All of the cost pressures in our business are coming from that side. But we have the demand. So it's for us, kind of that balance of like, not stemming the demand, but really like trying to, kind of be choiceful and prioritize. And so to some extent, when you're in that situation, things like innovation, because you've got to deliver on your core brands. And so you have to be way more choiceful in how you prioritize.
We're going to take one more question, and I'm going to pass it to Jay.
This one's a two-part, both successful marketers in the industry, peers, friends. Second glass of wine.
Oh, gosh.
Keep it safe.
There's been many second glasses of wine.
Most memorable conversation you had from both.
Oh, golly.
I don't know if I can think of a memorable conversation, but I think the reason Jo Ann and I have always have been so tight is because our lives are very similar. We had daughters. Being a mother was very important and still is very important to us. Our careers were important. We kind of we're growing up in marketing together and getting more senior, kind of at the same times. And so we were able, there were many times I sat at a bar with Jo Ann and we bounced off like, how are you doing this? And I've got this boss dynamic that's challenging, or, gosh, I don't feel like I'm able to balance, being home with my daughter as much. And it was like this, had so much similarity in what was happening to us in our lives at the same time that I think, and we have a wonderful group of friends. There's a big group, there's a group of us that get together, but she and I kind of had just that kind of commonality and could understand that differently than other friends that we had. So it was always like the go-to on, a boss or a career change or a situation with our daughters, because we kind of were in the same place.
Yeah, I think it's similar. It's we have the same values, and we talk about things too. Like we don't do things for the money, just for the money, and so that's a guiding principle too. It's if for both of us, if something makes our stomach hurt, there's a reason, and then we'll, it's hey, let's catch up and let's have a glass of wine or two, and I need to pick your brain, and Julie sometimes holds me accountable, and the same, and we're really just trying to balance life and family and career and being good friends and good neighbors in the community and do good stuff and just trying to hold each other accountable. So it's a wonderful, wonderful friendship.
Yeah, and I mean, back to my point on mentorship, do I label Jo Ann as my mentor? No, but that is the definition of mentorship. And so having like that kind of people in your life, and whether it's superiors, it's friends, it's people who report to you, it's like, I think it's the trust that someone, you can talk to kind of very freely, and they get you and you get them. And so we're incredibly fortunate in that way. It is, yeah, I could go on for stories. Our daughters are the best of friends, even now, beyond us and our motivation to keep them together. They do it on their own. So it's wonderful to see it play out with our girls too.
Mm-hmm. And Julie's daughter's going out for Rush this week. So and my daughter did. And her daughter's at Indiana University, and my daughter's at Auburn, and they're text buddies and best friends. So, and our husbands are also best friends. So we got lucky.
We did. We're blessed, as Jo Ann would say. Yes.
I think with that, we can say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.